Medicine and friends of Baylor. Well, today we're going to start with the TEPI data. I don't know why, I just want to. So some good and bad news. So two of the nastiest viruses around, rotavirus and norovirus, both GI viruses. Norovirus is the one that is on cruise ships. I'm never going to go on a cruise ship. They tend to be increasing in the Texas wastewater, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. Influenza B and metapneumovirus viruses are also increasing. Mpox and RSV remain pretty high, and SARS-CoV-2 remains low, so that's the good news. If you look at measles, it won't go away. It's getting worse, actually. We're up to 1,136 cases already. Remember, 2,281 last year. We're almost halfway there, and it's only early March. We're gonna have way more cases. It wouldn't be surprising me if we got to 10,000 cases. I mean, it's crazy. 92% are unvaccinated. 4% have one MMR dose. As I said, hospitalizations will continue to rise with measles, and they are. It's up to 5%. Overall, it's usually around 10 to 12% get hospitalized. It's now at 5%, but each week it's gone higher and higher. So now we have 58 hospitalizations, all of them needless. I mean, there's some 20 cases under the age of 5 that are hospitalized. No need for that. This is how weekly measles cases by rash, and you can see by rash onset, well over a year now, so we will definitely be losing our disease-free status in the WHO. If you look at the hotspots, remain the same place. South Carolina has added almost 70 cases, is up to 653. My grandson, there was only one more in North Carolina, so they're up to 18. California added one, but Utah and South Carolina really remain the hotspots. And as I mentioned, we're up to 1,136, almost halfway, and we're only in early March. And of course, the places that are having outbreaks that are bad are the places that are under-vaccinated. Dark brown is less than 90% vaccinated, and the light, whatever color that is, orange or something, it's 90 to 95%. So, all the states that have low vaccination rates are going to continue to have outbreaks. It's just the way it is. And, now that it's been around, we may become what's called endemic in that it's just always around. It's so infectious, it'll find communities that, are under-vaccinated, just be rampant. So there needs to be a real effort to push MMR vaccines now. I mean, it's really important. So COVID, we're lucky in that it's not looking like too bad a season. Early indicators, test positivity and emergency room diagnoses are going down. Severity indicators are also not so bad in terms of hospitalizations and number of deaths. And if you look at the COVID deaths per 100,000, you can see 2020 and 2021 were really bad, 22, and it's really dropped off. That's largely due to changes in the virus and the fact that people have been exposed. Flu is interesting. It's not really falling anymore. It's sort of been stable, but what is happening is that more and more of the flu is becoming Influenza B, and that's the Victoria strain. You can see A continues to drop, but if you look at the total cases in this black line, it's pretty much plateaued. That's not uncommon with flu. What happens is over the season, so many people either get vaccinated or get the flu that over time the virus has a different selective pressure, and so the Influenza B, which has not been around much, begins to have more and more opportunity to expand. And that's what's happening. You can see Influenza B. This is sort of what happened with the current version, H3N2 subclade K, that emerged in the southern hemisphere late in the season and became the dominant flu strain here this year. That's what's happening with Influenza B in the northern hemisphere. And as you can see, H3N2 is the dominant Influenza A, and Victoria lineage is the dominant Influenza B. So I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. We had this biphasic peak in 24-25 last season. You can see up, and then it peaked again in February. Always peaks in the 52nd week, the last week in December, but then they had this other peak in late February and March. It looks like we are on the plateau that looks like 23-24, which is sort of this. It's not falling as fast as I'd hoped, but it's just sort of chugging along. It's been really flat. In terms of mortality, it's interesting. This is considered a very bad year for kids, but not so bad for sort of a standard for adults. This is the mortality peak for this year compared to other years. And you can see our peak is below the season in 22-23 and 23-24. But if you look at the pediatric mortality, it wasn't as high as last year, but it's higher than the previous 2 years. And so it's considered a pretty bad year. And this I found fascinating. If you look at flu versus COVID mortality, this is COVID deaths starting with 2021 and then flu. Remember in 2021 when everyone was masked, flu almost disappeared. There was almost no deaths, so it's not even present. But this is a pretty typical mortality curve. It's not, it's not changed much. But look what's happened to COVID. It has dropped dramatically from being really high mortality to just about a little bit worse than flu, but not much worse. This is because the virus has evolved so much, and people have had either been vaccinated so many times or have caught the virus that there's now a sort of resistance to it. And so I think it's really fascinating that it's now about the same as flu mortality. All right, that's what I wanted to end for those things. I want to talk a few interesting papers. And this one in particular is why we need evidence-based decision-making. And, you'll read in the popular press, oh, you got to get this test or do that test. Unfortunately, a lot of it's driven by sort of the hype in biotech companies. So biotech companies routinely will hype their product because they're trying to increase the value of it. And you can remember what happened with Theranos. That company completely failed. It was all hype, no reality. Well, there's another company that people know about named Grail, and it has a test called Gallery test, which is a non-invasive cancer test. And this, I've had many people call me, oh, I've got to get this test, have to get this test. And what happens is the idea is that you draw blood, so it's minimally invasive, and by looking at DNA methylation patterns, so sort of the DNA that comes out of cancer cells, they thought that they would be able to predict early on 50 different types of cancer. But they didn't know the sensitivity or specificity, and so it was really kind of just a promise without a lot of data. I give them a little credit. I'll give them a lot of credit because they actually did a prospective study that we'll talk about. But because of the promising results and all the hype, that company was purchased by a well-known sequencing company, Illumina, for about $8 billion. So the valuation of Grail went up tremendously. Well, they partnered with the United Kingdom National Health System to do a 3-year prospective study. And again, I give them credit for doing this, where the idea was to screen for cancer, and in the UK they would do standard of care and then compare that to standard of care plus the Grail test. And so they looked at 142,000 people between the ages of 50 and 77, half were screened standard, half standard plus Grail. And after 1 year, basically, the results were negative. So there was not a significant reduction in the number of cancers diagnosed, and the UK is stopping the study. Good example of where you get a lot of hype. Everyone says you got to get this test. Finally do the study, and it doesn't seem like it's really of value. Not only that, a lot of people scared to death because they got a positive diagnosis when they didn't have cancer. So, we'll see. They're going to publish the results of it more in May, so maybe there'll be some nuances in the study where one type of cancer worked. But just in general, this is a good example of people saying you have to get a test, hyping it, and it's actually of no value. One other thing I wanted to, there's an interesting study looking at mRNA research. So, the government decided that we're not supporting mRNA research for no reason at all. I mean, I absolutely do not understand this. But so this is a paper that reviewed all of the mRNA studies over the past 28 years. There's been 28 years of funding, about $1.65 billion of research to study mRNA vaccines. 510 million of that research was specifically to develop the COVID vaccine. That was the wildly successful result of Operation Warp Speed, which I do not understand why the government doesn't take more credit for that. That was a vaccine developed within 1 year. When you look at what was the cost of hospitalizations for COVID, just in the 23-24 1 year, was over $22 billion. So, if you think about how much money was saved by $500 million in research, because most of the people, remember, the vaccine is very good at keeping you out of the hospital. People who got vaccinated were not in the hospital. Those who didn't get vaccinated, that was $22 billion, at least, in 1 year. So the savings is fantastic. And now they want to get rid of mRNA research for multiple other infectious diseases and NIH. So my sister said I can't just call these stupid decisions anymore. So I've invented a new term. I'm now calling them IDMs, incomprehensible decision making. So this was a great example of IDMs. You know, and they started coming up with the phrase like defund mRNA vaccine. It reminds me of like defunding the police. Both are IDMs, indefensible decision making. But you know, what are you going to do? And then lastly, this is for my family that makes fun of me. I like bird watching. And you know, I have one of those video things, so I'm always looking at the birds, and I get a little notification on my iPhone, and I get to see my favorite cardinal saying good morning, or chickadee. Well, finally, there's a study in Journal of Neuroscience that looked at 29 expert birders and matched them with 29 age max people who were not interested in bird watching. And they looked at their cognition and structural anatomy of their brain. And it turns out bird watchers have a better compacted brain for decision making and less cognitive decline. So Janet, don't make fun of me because I like to watch birds. I'm sticking with it. Okay, I want to end today with a bunch of shout outs. First of all, congratulations to Dr. Susan Rosenberg, Professor of Molecular and Human Genetics, who was elected to the Board of Directors of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, known as the AAAS. It's the world's largest general scientific society dedicated to advancing science, engineering, innovation. So congratulations, Susan. Also, congratulations to our own Tony Piedra, who won the Chanock Award. He's a professor of molecular virology and microbiology, and has been selected to be the joint recipient of the 2027 Chanock Award from the RSV Society. So congratulations, Tony. Also, big shout out to Dr. James Hill, professor and chair of OB-GYN at Christus San Antonio, who will be recognized by Texas Public Radio with the Illuminate Award that honors a trailblazer or newsmaker driving meaningful change in San Antonio.
Come on, Baylor to the inside. Final lap, here we go. No, it's going to be Baylor on the wall.
This week marked the start of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. Once again, we are sponsoring the Chuck Wagon races. It has a giant BCM logo on the side. Sometimes they turn over. Not this year, hopefully. Anyway, Lily is all excited. She's all prepared and is ready. And Lily, where'd she go? She took off her hat. Anyway, Lily's ready for the rodeo, and so am I. Anyway, have a wonderful weekend. I can't wait to see you next week.